If AI is everywhere, why are so many companies still struggling to make it work? You're listening to 10-Minute Tech Talks, tech and business tips for the time-crunched entrepreneur. And I'm your host, Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and Tech 5 Radio. In part one of this mini-series, we talked about how AI crossed into the business mainstream. Now it's time for the harder question. Why do so many implementations stall? In this episode, we get into the real blockers, from data quality and security risks to leadership missteps and workforce anxieties. And we'll discover what smart organizations are doing to overcome them. This is where AI strategy meets reality. Let's keep on listening for part two of this mini-series. I think about our tech council members. Our typical tech council member is like 20 people, like maybe 10 million in sales or something like that, which is a good, like, as we call them, mid-sized business. That's probably small to some areas, which they'd be thinking about when they are looking at adopting AI and looking at what are some of the key things they should be really thinking about to follow through to make sure they can get a better chance of seeing that good return on investment.
I would say the number one issue facing my clients and tech companies and even the firm that I work at with Chris, Babst, Calland, right? Number one issue in implementing AI is data privacy and security and confidentiality concerns. What you put in as an input into a model, you have to treat it, if you're using a free AI service like a Chat GPT and you're not paying for it, you're essentially putting information into the public domain. You got to into the wild. And so when you are at Babst and you're working with sensitive client information, that's unacceptable, right? Because you don't want to risk that. So, the goal is to understand what data you're incorporating and implementing and inputting into these systems, and be darn sure that what you're not putting in is confidential, proprietary, third-party proprietary information that you're putting in. Export controlled information, because suddenly you might be opening yourself up to both civil and criminal penalties if you're, putting in export controlled or sensitive classified information, God forbid. So again, understanding what your users of AI in your organization are inputting, making sure they're trained, or giving them only tools that are secure and live within a constrained domain that protect your confidential information, which many of the AI systems, the paid models do, is critical as the first order of business.
Yeah, I think that from an operational decision-making perspective, leaders need to understand that there's in my opinion, way too much AI out there right now, doing so many singular things that you can get high on the number of things that you can do to transform your entire organization onto AI. A critical eye and a management eye needs to really look at what are the problems in our organization. Where do we need to gain the efficiencies? Where do we need to make faster decisions? Where do we need to figure out why things are breaking? And really focus in on the real key AI, because there's a cost associated with each of these individualized AI products. You need to make a cost benefit analysis to say, I'm going to spend this to achieve that. And you can get way out over your skis saying, we need all of this because we want to achieve everything, which just why the CFOs are getting so nervous about the overall thing.
Yeah, I'm sure something that you probably see, and I've seen out there so much, is that, that same thing, like you're almost just being blitzed with all these opportunities. You want to do them all at once, but you really need to be able to step back and say, where am I going to see the most bang for my buck? And start there and stay focused to see that success. So that way, then you can learn from that and apply it towards then putting this technology towards other business issues that you might have. But it's so difficult. So it makes the world ripe for consultants right now to help people focus, I suppose.
Go ahead.
And Jonathan, this sounds like 2024 again, so I don't mean to be stale here, but it's still just as valid today as it was a year ago. These systems are still imperfect. They're still spitting out, biased results and times. They're still, not necessarily reliable. They're prone to hallucinations. Yes, they're getting better, but, you need to make sure there's oversight in your organization to make sure, particularly, I'm going to use the law firm example. We need to train our lawyers to make sure that they can evaluate the AI output and tailor it to be accurate for our clients and our client needs. Number one issue across the board. We also have operational challenges, right? When you're starting to implement AI in your organization, you need to be thinking about your AI policies, your training capabilities, making sure your entire team kind of plays out of the same AI playbook within your organization. And that is not a one size fits all. We work with our clients on these AI handbooks and policies and addenda all the time.
Okay.
And it has to be tailored to what their particular use case in the organization is across the board.
It's absolutely critical that the implementation of a proper implementation happens at the top level down, not the other way around. If the C-suite is saying, here's your budget, go buy the AI of what you need, it's going to fail. The C-suite needs to understand what they're buying. They need to lead the charge of the implementation. And in fact, they need to be the power users to get everybody else invested in the use of the products that they're spending all this money.
And
Set
here's
the tone
something
from
that,
the top, right? Yeah, makes sense.
you know, you can't go through a day without reading a news article about how AI is going to take your job. You know, you have an entire generation of kids coming out of college worried about their future ability to have a gainful job. We take that so seriously because there is an element of work, reskilling, training that has to be done today. You know, we're already late at the game if you're not doing it now, to make sure that your young, you know, in our firm, young associates in other organizations, the people who are most likely to be displaced by certain functions that AI can do, you need to be thinking about your workforce and finding a way. It's almost like human computer interaction. How do you build for a future of your workplace where AI is a tool and very much built into the capability of the workforce output of your organization? If you're not thinking about that now, you will create a situation where you will not be able to offer jobs in the future.
That it sounds like a whole topic unto itself that we must nerd out on in a future episode with you, because that is something where, oh my goodness, I would love to really scratch into that, because there's so much going on around that, so much fear. Some of it's founded, some of it's unfounded, but in between, like, yeah, this is one of those once in a lifetime opportunities where I feel like we need to adjust how we approach so many things in business. And it's about our people working and people having livelihoods. So that is just so important. As we talk about all this, it makes me think about how much your practice has changed in order to advise your clients around all this. Like you mentioned the fact that like you're helping people with AI handbooks. That wasn't something you were doing 2 years ago. So this is like something, honestly, you have to become this expert in this in order to give the guidance for your clients. As you can see, AI doesn't fail because the technology isn't powerful enough. It fails when leadership treats it like a tool to buy instead of a capability to build. The organizations that win will be the ones that lead from the top, protect their data, train their people, and use AI to augment their workforce, not replace it. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Tech Talks. If this conversation sparked new questions or ideas, make sure you're subscribed, because this is just the beginning of how AI is reshaping business. And I surely look forward to seeing you on the next one.